If you clicked on this video, the likelihood that you're a fan of culture and adventure is pretty high. African culture is very vast, and it's something that is interesting to know. Sit back as we unravel some of these African cultures you don't know. Each nation in West Africa has a unique legacy influenced by centuries of customs, exchanges, and historical occurrences, making the area rich in historical significance and cultural variety. Understanding the historical and cultural characteristics of each nation in the area is essential to understanding the complexity of West African identity and its importance on a global scale. Traditionally, Burkinabe society has been patriarchal. The country's rural society is still rather traditional in nature, despite the fact that the urban society has somewhat modernized. The highest power in the home is held by a male member, often the oldest man. In rural places, agricultural labor is performed by both men and women. Butchering, hunting, and other labor-intensive agricultural tasks are often carried out by males. Women take care of the kids and the housework. Both boys and girls are encouraged to pursue education in the cities. Though to a lesser level, women work in nearly every position that men do. Burkina Faso's rural communities have a higher rate of arranged marriages. The parents of the groom give the bride's family a bride price in return for their daughter. The woman goes to live with the husband's family after they are married. Although divorce is legal, children from a marriage often remain with the father's side of the family. The bride price is supposed to be given back to the ex-husband's family by women who remarry. It is not unusual for families that practice Islam and other indigenous religions to have many spouses. It is common for widowed ladies to marry their brother-in-law. Burkina Faso has a high prevalence of extended families. Frequently, 3 or more generations coexist. In the country, families with more than 8 members are typical, and in the city, more than 6. Because of their life experience and accumulated knowledge, the elderly are revered. Among other female siblings and family members, the mother raises the infant. In rural settings, the village as a whole frequently takes part in raising a kid and teaching them societal values. In rural regions, access to high-quality education is limited, whereas in metropolitan areas, it is average. Politeness and hospitality are highly valued by the Burkinabés. Handshakes are a must for elaborate greetings. Even if an elder is only a few years older, they are still respected. The ethnic variety of Burkina Faso is very high. With 52% of the population, the Mossi are the biggest ethnic group in the nation. In the nation, the Fulani, 8.4%, Gurma, 7%, Bobo, 4.9%, Gurunsi, 4.6%, and Senufo, 4.5%, are the ethnic minority with the largest populations. In Burkina Faso, the effects of French colonial domination are still evident. For starters, French is Burkina Faso's official language. Indigenous languages are also spoken by many ethnic groups. In Burkina Faso, Muslims make up 61.5% of the population. There are also sizable populations of Christians, both Catholic and Protestant. The majority of people follow the traditional indigenous faiths. Burkina Faso's cuisine is comparable to that of other West African countries. The Burkinabe people eat rice, millet, and maize as staple cereals. Other dietary mainstays include peanuts, okra, yams, potatoes, beans, and so forth. Mutton, goat, and beef are common types of grilled meat. They also eat fish. Burkinabe recipes are also made with vegetables including tomatoes, onions, pumpkins, cabbage, spinach, and carrots. A chilled polenta-style cake made with millet, sorghum, or corn is a typical dish of the cuisine. It is known as 𝐾𝐨 and is eaten with a vegetable sauce consisting of sumbala, tomatoes, carrots, and peppers. Sometimes the 𝐾𝐨 is served with a side dish of meat. Hands are used to consume it. Poulet bicyclette is a grilled chicken dish that is popular throughout the nation. In Burkina Faso, riz gras is a rice meat meal that is frequently given on special occasions. On top of rice, it often consists of substantial portions of meat and veggies. Okra is used to make the sauce known as sauce gombo. Burkinabe women typically wear a long cotton skirt that is wrapped around their waist. Above the skirts are colorful shirts. Men often dress in pants and a cotton shirt. There are males who wear shoes with embroidery. In metropolitan regions, particularly in the cities, westernized clothing is prevalent. There is a long history of oral literature in Burkina Faso. Folk tales and legends, poetry, heroic epics, songs, and dances were the means by which the history of the nation's diverse ethnic groups was preserved for generations. Only until the nation was colonized did written literature begin to flourish. The oral histories, folk tales, and folklore of the nation's people have inspired several Burkinabe authors to write about them in more recent years. One of them is the Maxims, Thoughts, and Riddles of the Mossi, a written account of the Mossi people's oral history. During the 1960s, Burkinabe playwrights published a number of important plays. Among Burkina Faso's most famous crafts include wood sculptures, baskets, leather crafts, hand-dyed textiles, ceramics, and sculptures made from lost wax casting. Masks, musical instruments, and sculptures used in holy religious ceremonies are also made in the country since a sizable portion of the populace still practices traditional faiths. Burkina Faso's handicrafts business has grown as a result of the country's expanding tourist sector. The folk music of the almost 60 distinct ethnic groups that call Burkina Faso home is the foundation of the country's music. The majority of popular music in the nation is in French. Traditional music of the nation is played on drums, flutes, and stringed instruments. In the western region of the nation, music is frequently produced using a balafon, a xylophone-like instrument fashioned from dried gourds. In the nation, folk music is accompanied by folk dances, which feature dancers dressed in traditional, colorful clothing. Young people in cities are drawn to pop, rock, and other contemporary dance and music genres. Since gaining independence in 1960, Côte d'Ivoire, sometimes referred to as the Jewel of West Africa, has served as an example of political stability and economic prosperity for its neighboring African nations. Because of the region's abundance of ivory, French and Portuguese traders termed it the Ivory Coast in the 14th century. The formal name of the nation is the République de Côte d'Ivoire, which reflects French rule from 1843 until independence. The country changed its name to Côte d'Ivoire in 1985. The country's thriving economy now contrasts with its unstable political environment. As of late 2000, it is still unclear if Côte d'Ivoire would carry on with its long history of socio-economic progress in the face of this fragile political environment. There are practitioners of each of the major religions, including Islamic clerics, Christian priests, nuns, and ministers, as well as traditional religious priests and diviners. A key religious figure in Islam is the marabout, a mystic, doctor, and miracle worker who possesses both moral and magical power. He is revered for his ability to bestow amulets, which shield their user from evil. Priests that perform ceremonial observances for cults honoring particular deities, village leaders, and lineage heads are examples of Akan religious practitioners in the south. These priests, known as Akomfo, also serve as diviners. Many of them are thought to possess clairvoyance and can identify the cause of their followers' spiritual problems. They are paid to do this. Ceremonial dance, ancestor worship sacrifices, mask carving and ceremonies, fetish priest rites, and divination ceremonies are just a few of the collective events and rituals that are significant to many indigenous religions. The most significant of them is the Yam Festival, which is a time of gratitude for bountiful harvests, a rite of purification that helps ride the group of evil forces, and a memorial ceremony for the deceased that asks for their protection in the future. Ivoirians perform rituals at a range of hallowed locations, including mosques, Christian and Roman Catholic churches, and other shrines devoted to spirits. Across the nation, missions with churches, schools, and seminaries spring up. The biggest church in Africa and the Grand Mosque are located in Yamoussoukro. The great majority of Ivoirians think that a person's soul continues to exist after they pass away. Funerals are lavishly celebrated because death is frequently seen as the conversion of a regular person into a revered ancestor. In order to provide their loved ones the necessary burial rituals and memorials, which typically occur 40 days after the death and include days or even weeks of eating, dancing, drumming, and singing, relatives spend a lot of money. Nigeria is a Western African nation with a diverse population. It is also one of the most populous nations in the world, with around 200 million people. The country's varied culture tends to vary from north to south. Some of the most noteworthy aspects of Nigerian culture are listed here. Many ethnic groups that speak 527 different languages make up Nigeria's culture. Over 1,150 different ethnic groups and dialects are known to exist. The Fulani, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, and 𝐬𝐵 are a few of the most popular ethnic groupings. Although there is a greater concentration of minority ethnic groups in the northern and center areas of Nigeria, these communities are present across the country. Nigerian customs span many civilizations and are diverse. Nigerians, for instance, usually have 3 weddings unless they are marrying someone from outside the country. The first wedding takes place in a customary setting, the second takes place in a court, and the third takes place in a mosque or church. The justification for these marriages is that the relationship must be approved by custom, law, and religion. The mother-in-law assisting the daughter-in-law after giving birth and younger men pursuing apprenticeships with older and wealthier men are examples of additional customs. Meals strong in carbs, such cassavas, rice, maize, yams, and an abundance of veggies, make up the majority of Nigerian cuisine. These meals may be made in a variety of ways. For instance, you might grind the cassavas and use the flour to make a tasty and affordable porridge. You may fry the yams in oil or mash them. Meat is another delicacy that is processed into wild meat from antelopes and giraffes, and suya, a type of meat that resembles barbecue meat. Particularly in the West and the South, the majority of the cuisine is spicy. Other traditional foods include ogbono, eba, okra, egusi, and fufu. Traditional brews like palm wine are among the drinks. Nigeria is home to a number of textile companies that provide apparel for the country's citizens. Depending on the ethnic group, culture, and religion, fashion is varied. More modern designs are the result of the style's recent evolution. In the past, people from cultures like the Yoruba used robes for formal occasions, 𝐽𝐻𝐿, a fabric that women wrap over their heads, and other types of apparel. Other civilizations like the Igbo have historically solely worn clothing for modesty, in contrast to other cultures where clothing has always been a status signal. Nigerian society places a high value on families, which are often bigger than those in the West. The reason for the greater number of families is that having more children raises a man's social status. Newborns are therefore proudly and joyfully viewed as the future. Men are allowed to have many spouses in the northern areas of Nigeria, where polygamy is legal. Nevertheless, this practice is prohibited in all southern Nigerian states. Ghana is a nation in West Africa that is formally known as the Republic of Ghana. Ghana has a rich and varied history that spans millennia of civilizations and influences from many cultures and empires. There has been human settlement in the area that is now Ghana for thousands of years. Around the 11th century AD, the Bono state was the region's first recognized civilization. The Ashanti Empire, which rose to prominence as one of the most potent nations in West Africa in the 17th century, came next. Ghana developed as a significant hub for trade, especially in salt and gold, starting in the 9th century. Islam expanded over the region as a result of Arab and Berber traders brought in via the trans-Saharan trade routes. Ghana, however, continued to be mostly a pagan culture with its own religious customs. With more than 80 languages spoken in its many areas, Ghana is a multilingual nation. English, a holdover from the colonial era, is the official language. Nonetheless, a number of native tongues are extensively used, including Hausa, 𝐷, and Akan. Ghanaians value greetings and demonstrate their respect by using proper titles and body language. Different ethnic groups in Ghana wear different traditional attire. One of Ghana's most famous and distinctive textiles is the kente cloth. It is frequently worn on special events and festivals and is handmade with vivid colors and elaborate designs. Other traditional textiles include the smock, a loose-fitting garment used in the country's north, and the adinkra cloth, which has symbolic motifs. Ghanaian culture is heavily influenced by dance and music. The employment of flutes, xylophones, drums, and other traditional instruments is what defines traditional music. Ghana gave birth to the highlife genre, which combines Western elements with native rhythms. The vibrant and rhythmic motions that are an essential component of Ghanaian festivities and social gatherings are displayed by dance styles including adowa, kapanlogo, and azonto. Ghana is well known for its colorful festivals, which are observed by many groups all year round. These celebrations are times to remember the past, pay respect to ancestors, and celebrate harvests. The most well-known festivities include the Odwira celebration of the Akwapim people, the Homowo festival of the Gay people, and the Aboakir festival of the Afutu people. Ghana's abundant agricultural output is reflected in its cuisine. Food staples include kenkey, fermented corn dough, banku, fermented corn and cassava dough, and fufu, a dough-like meal prepared from pounded cassava or yam. These are frequently served with different kinds of stews, soups, and sauces. Popular Ghanaian foods include wakye, a rice and bean dish, kelewele, or spicy fried plantains, and jollof rice. There are many different religions in Ghana. The vast majority of Ghanaians follow traditional African faiths, Islam or Christianity. Many communities still adhere to traditional beliefs and customs, which include respect for spirits, ancestors, and the natural world. Ghanaian society is characterized by the harmonious coexistence of religious and cultural beliefs. A long history of artistic expression exists in Ghana. Wood carvings, ceramics, basketry, and beading are examples of traditional Ghanaian art. Adinkra symbols are frequently used in jewelry, textiles, and other crafts to symbolize ideas and sayings. The excellent modern artists and craftspeople who combine old methods with current inspirations are another reason for the nation's fame. These facets of Ghanaian culture are but a small sampling of the nation's vast and varied legacy. With its people embracing both traditional beliefs and international influences in a dynamic and lively way, Ghanaian culture is still evolving, adapting, and thriving. The Republic of Benin was known by its French colonial name, Dahomey, until 1975. As a reflection of the new government's Marxist-Leninist philosophy, the name was changed to the People's Republic of Benin 3 years after the coup that installed Major 𝐾𝐴. The name was abbreviated to the Republic of Benin following the fall of the 𝐾𝐴 regime in 1989. The most powerful kingdom on the slave coast, which stretched from Lagos to the Bight of Benin, was known as Dahomey prior to colonization. In addition to the former Fon Kingdom of Dahomey, Benin now consists of regions that are home to several other ethnic groups. Geographical factors and a history that includes colonialism, 4 centuries of commercial relations with Europe, competition between pre-colonial kingdoms, waves of migration, and the effects of colonialism have contributed to the nation's lack of cultural homogeneity, with divisions along linguistic and ethnic lines, as well as along religious and occupational lines. The nation is 43,483 square miles, 112,622 square kilometers in size. It borders Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Togo, and Niger. 5 different geographic zones may be identified. Coconut trees are found in the south on a slender stretch of coastline that is dotted with streams and lagoons. Oil palms are found in the north on a plateau of rich iron clay soil with swampy patches scattered throughout. A forested savanna with a few mountainous patches makes up the center region. The highest point is the Atakora mountain range in the northwest, while the Niger River Valley is located in the northeast. With a dry season from November to April and a rainy season from May to October, the majority of the nation experiences tropical weather. In the south, there is the most vegetation and rainfall. 84 districts make up the 6 departments that make up the nation. Although Porto Novo is the capital, the major city, Cotonou lies nearby and serves as the seat of government. Cooking is done outside or, in the event of rain, in a separate room or shelter, even in many metropolitan locations. While more young males are learning to cook, family meals are still prepared by women and girls. The majority of individuals buy food at the market many times a week since many households lack refrigeration. A staple starch cooked into a kind of mush and served with a sauce made of meat or fish and vegetables makes up the basic meal. At least twice a day in the afternoon and evening, food is provided. Food from roadside sellers or reheated leftovers from the previous evening's dinner may be served in the morning. The main starches in the south are rice, corn, and manioc. In the middle and northern populations, millet, sorghum, and yams are preferred. Okra, tomatoes, peanuts, eggplant, peppers, pumpkin seeds, and other vegetables can all be found in sauces. You may make side dishes with legumes. Green beans, lettuce, and carrots are being added to the diet in the marshy regions. The Beninese also consume a wide range of tropical fruits. Traditionally, the northern peoples made and drank millet beer, while the southerners manufactured palm wine. Alcoholic drinks are probably imported these days. Whereas meat is more typical in the north, smoked, dried, or fresh fish is more likely to be served with a meal in the south. There are chickens, sheep, and goats all around the nation. Protein-deficient diets are common among the impoverished. The colonial era saw the introduction of European dishes. Many young individuals desire to eat more costly and frequently less nutrient-dense imported goods because they find the conventional diet boring. Roadside merchants sell goodies to both adults and children. Men who have no female relatives to prepare meals for them frequently dine at improvised outdoor eateries. There are restaurants serving French food throughout the cities. Eating is a part of every holiday, wedding, and funeral. On Tabaski, a Muslim feast day, families save money to buy a big sheep and celebrate by eating mutton. Rural people buy things like spaghetti and canned peas to eat on special occasions. Despite the growing production of commercial crops, the nation produces enough food to sustain itself. Agriculture employs almost half of the population, and old internal trade networks continue to be used to transport food between regions. It is challenging to get agricultural products to markets in rural regions due to a lack of acceptable roadways. Food shortages affect about 900,000 individuals on an occasional basis. Christians keep pigs, and fishing is centered in the south. Fulani herders raise the majority of livestock. Farmers' salaries were low during the communist era, despite the government's encouragement of agro-business projects and its use of rural development programs like cooperatives to boost productivity. Farmers were compelled to engage in more subsistence farming in order to support themselves after being forced to sell their goods to government-run businesses at inflatedly cheap rates. Over the past 10 years, the economy has grown at a faster rate due to gains in cash and subsistence crops, as well as expansion in manufacturing and industry. However, the currency was devalued in 1994, and tough austerity measures were part of the structural adjustment programs agreed with the World Bank and the International Money Fund following the fall of the communist government. In the past, families organized the majority of weddings, but more and more educated elites are choosing to marry on their own. Both civil and traditional rituals are possible for a marriage. The new couple may move, or the wife may join her husband's family. Due to the rapid remarriage that follows divorce or the death of a spouse, marriage is almost ubiquitous. In polygamous marriages, cow-wives are expected to get along, yet jealousy is common. Money or valuables may be transferred to the bride's family as part of the marriage. It could be required to renegotiate the bride wealth after a divorce, particularly if there are no children. Children are the fathers because women marry into a patrilineal descent system. Marriages are often fragile since wives do not join the husband's family. Kinship relationships entail both duty and loyalty. The most prevalent descent groupings outside of the immediate family are the clan and the lineage. Kin are required to contribute financially and attend significant rituals. Members in rural and urban regions are connected via kin networks. While fostering occasionally leads to rural relatives being transported to big cities to work as domestic staff, children may be transferred to relatives to nurture. Muslims make up around 15% of the population, whereas Christians, primarily Roman Catholics, make up 15%. The remaining population adheres to indigenous religious systems. The coastal slaves brought vodun, or voodoo, to Brazil and the Caribbean. Vodun includes divination and spirit possession, and some of its spirits were acquired from the Yoruba religion. These divine abilities give believers a way of life and aid them in overcoming disease and infertility. Indigenous belief systems hold that after death, ancestors continue to be a part of the community. Offerings feed the ancestors, while shrines pay respect to them. Each deceased person's 𝐽𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻, or circular metal sculptures on staffs, are produced by the fawn and placed in the family complex. Funerals in some cultures include a series of rites before the deceased is deemed to have fully transitioned into the role of an ancestor. Taking the time to properly welcome someone using traditional oral formulations is a sign of good manners. It is customary to shake hands with everyone when you enter or exit an appointment. People who know each other well may give each other a cheek kiss as a greeting. Although it is frowned upon for people of the opposite sex to show affection in public, males often stroll hand in hand. 161st. A fundamental component of hospitality is providing food and beverages to guests. Refusing is regarded as impolite. Many individuals use their right hand's fingers to eat in the conventional manner. Eating with the left hand or offering something to someone else with it is seen as ill taste. Children are supposed to respect their elders and be obedient. Girls in particular are taught gender-appropriate duties at a young age. The majority of kids play simple games and have few toys. 8% of youngsters in rural areas are thought to be employed as domestic helpers and plantation laborers. The French educational system serves as the model for this one. Starting at age 5, school is free and required for 7 years. Many families, however, are unable to pay for materials and uniforms or require the work of their children. The majority of parents make sacrifices to send their kids to school since it is well acknowledged that education is the path to social development. Zimbabwe is a southern African nation that borders South Africa, Mozambique, Zambia, and Botswana. It was once known as Rhodesia and Southern Rhodesia. The 𝐿𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿 people, who are primarily Christians, make up the bulk of its population. But the nation is also home to a wide variety of people, languages, ideologies, and traditions. Due to British colonization, technology, and current societal forces, Zimbabwe's dominant culture has undergone tremendous change from its historic form. Although some rural Zimbabweans still follow and uphold traditional practices and beliefs, they make up a very tiny portion of the population. Many Zimbabweans now place more importance on Christianity, the British educational system, and economic success than they do on some traditional customs. Despite this, the customs and social structures of tribal groupings continue to have a significant influence on identification and social etiquette. Despite globalization and urban migration, the majority of Zimbabweans still have a strong sense of ancestry and respect for their forebears. The original inhabitants of Zimbabwe are said to have lived in the area for over 10 centuries and have Bantu ancestry. The two largest ethnic groups are the Ndebele and the Shona. About 80% of the population is made up of Shona people. With 6 major groups, the Manyika, Ndau, Zezuru, Karanga, Karekore, and Razvi, they have historically had a strong regional clan system. Similarities in language and culture serve as the foundation for these group formations. The Ndebele and Kalanga are the two main tribal groupings of the Ndebele, who make up around 14% of the population. The Venda, Batonga, Balonka, and Shangane people are smaller ethnic groupings. In addition to small Asian populations in the cities, there are still some white Zimbabweans, primarily of British descent, living in the nation. Nevertheless, less than 1% of people belong to any of these groups. After Zimbabwe gained independence from British domination, the majority of its white citizens left the country. Nearly all Zimbabweans are able to speak a native Bantu language, with Shona being the most widely spoken. The four main dialects of Shona, Zezuru, Kalanga, Manyika, and Ndau, have similar vocabulary and tonal and grammatical features, but since English is used in government, administration, education, and higher education, many Zimbabweans are also fluent in it. Urban Zimbabweans can typically switch between Shona and English with ease, though some younger people may need to replace some Shona words with English. Tribes and communities in Zimbabwe have always practiced collectivism. In order to get support, safety, and a sense of belonging, people frequently prioritize the needs of their family, group, or community over their own. Within tribes, meeting together as a community to exchange tales, music, songs, and dancing is highly valued. Indeed, the long history of storytelling and folklore in Zimbabwean culture gives every generation a sense of kinship with their past and relatives. Additionally, these tales provide groups a common sense of the history of their community. Theatrical and musical acts can accompany storytelling events. Dance and music are also essential components of Zimbabwean culture. The unusual sounds, rhythms, and instruments of Zimbabwean traditional music reflect the people's color, inventiveness, joy, and energy. With its soft, acoustic tone, the mbira is a piece of wood with metal keys that is utilized at most celebrations. The mbira is revered in various cultures and may be used to summon spirits, control the weather, and ward off illness, among other things. In Zimbabwe, there are several other ceremonial customs and ceremonies. While some are more commonly practiced, others are exclusive to particular tribes. Many have to do with commemorating life events like marriage, the installation of chiefs, or the circumcision ritual that signifies a boy's passage into manhood. Making sacrifices and communicating with the spirit realm are also common practices in traditional festivals, ceremonies, and rituals. It should be mentioned, nevertheless, that a large number of urbanized Zimbabweans, particularly those in Australia, do not believe in the spirit realm. People from Zimbabwe are frequently described as being incredibly hospitable, friendly, and gregarious. Additionally, they are non-confrontational and quite formal. In general, people try to be amiable and steer clear of any conflict or friction that would be one's honor. Therefore, Zimbabweans could be too tolerant of other people's viewpoints or hesitant to express their own if they believe doing so will make others feel uncomfortable. This is due in part to the great cultural emphasis on civility, etiquette, and courteous behavior. It's usually accepted that a person's manners reveal their character and honesty. In Zimbabwe, every class and ethnic group has its own model for what they view as appropriate and courteous behavior. For instance, the Shona, who make up the biggest group, call conformance with socially acceptable behavior and knowledge 𝐃𝐿𝐴. The virtue-based, courteous, and moral style of acting in conformity with Shona cultural norms is known as 𝐃𝐿𝐴. This entails showing patience and self-control, obeying parents and other authority figures, showing respect for seniors, and adhering to social norms and cultural traditions. Warmth, caution, attentive behavior, and communal ideals are frequently highly valued. 𝐃𝐿𝐴, according to the Shona, is something that is learned and developed during puberty in order to eventually promote self-control. Hunhu in Shona, or Ubuntu in Mbedele, are terms used to describe someone who has been well taught and brought up to be polite. Although it is impossible to translate Hunhu and Ubuntu into English precisely, they both refer to the essence of humanity, humanness. Cultural differences exist in the ideals that guide etiquette conventions. Because individuals outside of Zimbabwe sometimes do not adhere to the same social norms that make up 𝐃𝐿𝐴, local Zimbabweans frequently believe that Varungu, white people, do not have Hunhu or Ubuntu. For instance, persons in the English-speaking West are not treated with the same respect and deference according to their age. 𝐼𝐻𝐾𝐿 refers to the lack of manners in someone who does not behave in accordance with Zimbabwe's code of civility and social appropriateness. What do you think of the culture of these African countries? Do you think they are too extreme or good? Let's have your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.